going to talk about guided reading. So with your table, people, just talk about like what you think of when you think of guided reading. What do you do? What do the kids do? Like, or just share out whatever you want. Like, how does it look for you in your classroom, guided reading? Or just what do you think of when you think of guided reading? Like, words.
Working with kids on their reading level, meeting their needs where they're at to grow them.
Yeah.
But adjustable levels, you can move them.
Yeah.
in
So
and out
that
of levels as they
differentiated.
go on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What else?
It's differentiated and definitely scaffolded. Each group might look different because what you're doing with your higher groups will differ from what you're working on with your lower groups.
Right. Right. Differ a lot. I know, like in my class, my high groups look nothing like my low groups. Like I'm working on word manipulation with my lower ones, and I'm working on, you know, extending projects to my higher groups. So yeah, so good. Yeah, so what y'all have in front of you, you have a little book that looks like this. So we're just going to go through this. It has the components of guided reading and questions, and then if you have any notes that you want to take, that can go on your little plate right here. You can take both of these if you'd like. So do you have anything to add?
So with that, when we're going through, we're going to talk about the components of guided reading. So let's go through the components, and you're going to get to see a lesson in its entirety. We're going to have 2 different lessons that we're going to be able to show you, so you'll see it all. You want to go through the components?
Yeah, so the components are, so like for your lower kids, if you want to have them do a warm read before you introduce a new book, so that's what that first one means, warm read. Do you know what warm read and cold read is? Yeah, okay. I figured. So you'd have your warm read with your lower kids, and then you'd introduce the cold read text. You'd have the mini lesson with the specific skill, word working, phonics skill, whatever that may be. Introduce those unfamiliar words. Those are going to be vocabulary words, sight words, just words that they're going to see within the text that they're reading that might be unfamiliar to them. Then you're going to set a purpose for the text, and then if you do any sort of like, do y'all do any like pre-writing or questioning?
Yeah,
predictions, yeah. And then while they're reading, you're taking notes. I know like people do this very differently. I have a sheet of paper that I have their names, and it has different boxes where I write notes on them as they're reading. I've seen people do it with stickers. That way they can move them, like if they're moving the groups. I know like some people do it in a notebook. So yeah, taking those notes, and then if you have to do a running record, like why would you have to do a running record?
If you want to see exactly where they are, like is this group good for them or did you
Right.
give up?
Right, if you need to move them, or if you're just kind of gauging where they're at that point. So yeah. And then after they're finished reading, then they do their responding either through writing or orally or with the project. So however that looks for y'all.
And as you're watching the video, go in and see if you can see all of these components. If you don't, make notes. If you have questions, comments, anything, put that on your graffiti sheet on your placemat. And we're going to be fast forwarding it. So feel free to tell us to stop at any point. Hey, I have a question about this. Why are you doing this?
And just so y'all know, this is not expected for y'all to do in one sitting. This is 21 minutes long. I know y'all don't have that much time for one group. So like, there will come a time where you can say, all right, we're going to stop at this point and we'll continue on the next time you see that group. This first group that you're seeing is a group of some of my highest kids. So what we're doing reflects their knowledge and obviously their reading level. But that's obviously going to look different for each group that you see. The length of time is going to be different for each group, and what you do within that group, within that time is going to be different. So just to kind of set the stage here for what you're looking at and what you're watching. So.
Ready?
Yeah.
Y'all have anything you want to add? Herzog or? No. Okay, here we go.
I-O-Y, teacher. Okay, Willa, do you have a word for O-I?
So we're going over the pattern.
Oil for O-I. What's your word? Soil. Right, soil. You know oil, you know soil, right? You just add the beginning sound. Yes. Aixa? Void. Ooh, I like that one. Void. How do you spell void? Yeah, there you go. B-O-I-D. Void. Void. Oil. Soil. One more. One more. Kathy, do you have one? B-O-I. We're doing oid. O-I. Oid. Can you tell me the oid, which is O-I? And it's kind of tricky because they say the same sound. Foil. There you go. Foil.
So yeah, so
Okay, so
basically we're just doing
O-Y.
the
A
spelling
lot of
pattern.
times you'll see the,
I do this
the
with
letters
them.
O-Y down in
Yeah,
the,
with my
at the
other
end of the
group.
word, but not always. Okay, so
With my other
it's,
group,
it's
you'll
kind of tricky.
We're doing the same thing but in a different way because they're actually taking letters and you watch it and they're manipulating them with the magnetic letters. Like this group, I didn't feel like they needed it, but obviously they did say O-Y on one of them. That was O-I. So, but this was like their very first time working with that pattern. So I wasn't expecting them to get it right the very first time. So yeah, do y'all do stuff like this during those kind of reading? Do y'all have any like examples of what y'all do? Because this is I struggle with this honestly, especially with my higher kids, because I feel like sometimes I'm not necessarily like making it hard enough for them in a sense. But then again, my kids do struggle a lot with spelling because of the situation that they're in with the dual language. So,
For my high kids lately, I found multisyllabic workbooks, and so we are working on how to break apart these longer words into the different syllable types and why it matters where we break it apart. And we're slowly working on, from me modeling one or two, them practicing one on their own, and I'm kind of guiding them through it. And I'm like, okay, I know that you know the word president, but let's look at how we split it, and if I split it this way, why it would sound differently.
I like
Or
that.
just to get them used to
Yeah,
working on that.
I like that.
Well, you said something about you modeling, and if you notice, she's modeling every time she wants them to do something, she's modeling exactly what she wants them to do by writing that out, and so she's showing that.
Like I'm letting them do it first, and then I write it after. Like in my lower groups, I usually do it first, and then they do it because just they're not. Some of them just need that extra support.
That gradual release.
Right, right.
You can kind
I'm
of
gonna fast forward to this.
or
So I'm just continuing with that pattern.
make sure it's a 7-up sentence. It has to be.
So here they're putting one of those words in a sentence and just writing it really quickly on their table.
And make sure your sentence has swag.
Do y'all know what swag is?
He's obviously very excited about what we're doing.
Go. No, come back home.
So they're gonna read these out, and then we're gonna start the
Okay,
book.
never mind.
Yeah,
I just said
keep going.
oops.
No, it's because they have like one of those like
Oh, got it. Got it.
Well, and, do you mind me saying
Yeah,
something?
no.
So this little girl right here, when started the word with because, and so she goes in and she corrects her and she's like, don't, start it with because, we don't start our sentences that way. And so she was like, the word wasn't because, it was
something else I
that
couldn't read it.
some word phonetically that she had sounded out because and wrote it. She was like, no, that's my animal. That's like that. She was like, and so the little girl goes, no, it does need a capital letter, and that one needs a capital letter as well. And so you could see that they were making those connections and extensions.
Yeah.
So sure, check it out. So think in your head what just the cover. Think in your head what you envision this book being about. Just in your head for now. Just in your head.
Just in your head, and it like immediately start talking.
I know.
So as she's setting up another activity, she's getting them to do something and stay on task and say.
And will you pause it for just a second? And
Okay,
these
so
words that are right
your
here,
word is
literally they tell you exactly like the key vocabulary. That's where I get these from, and that's what I put on those note cards. Like these things tell you everything to do, and we'll talk more about it. I'll let y'all look through them. Yeah, like I love those. It makes it so easy, and
And that's the project.
you don't exactly. Yes, that's what I was.
And those projects are amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I'll use those or not, but they're awesome. So that's where I
Tracker
got all
dogs. Okay, who would like to share what they think this book will be about? Bella?
Tracker dogs.
the title is Tracker Dogs, by the way.
Do you know what a tracker dog
I
is?
do. Like
I'm talking about.
German Shepherds and police dogs there to track people down. It's legit rescue dogs.
Okay.
And then, like the dogs that work with police and help catch robbers or bad guys.
Okay. Aisa?
Dog shepherds, helping people.
Okay. So that kind of answers this first question I have. It says, what do you think a tracker dog does? So a tracker dog probably has many different jobs, right? Like it's not just gonna be a tracker dog does this one thing. Obviously it tracks down a scent or something
Or
or
like a person.
or
like
they
if they're
do
lost.
right, yeah.
And
So
you can
there's
keep it
many
moving
different
and
there's many different jobs that tracker dogs do. Do you know what do you know about dogs and their sense of smell? Think about it for just a second.
And I got these questions from
What do you know about dogs and their sense of smell?
they have the sense of smell is like 100 times better than humans.
Okay, so how does that tie into dogs being tracker dogs?
Because tracker dogs need good scent because to track down the bad guys.
So like this conversation looks a lot different with my lower groups. Granted, the topics in the books obviously are going to be different and less, I guess you could say, intricate and complicated, but I don't necessarily pry for as much information with my lower groups because some of those kids don't have the vocabulary needed in order to answer those questions. So like it's obviously, y'all know this, like depending upon who is in that group and what their level is, you have to kind of like gauge and I guess alter your conversations that you have with them. But do y'all do y'all do some of this kind of stuff too? And y'all's like, what are some of the things that y'all do with y'all's kids before you have them start reading? Like when you give them a book, like what are some things that y'all do with them?
See what their background knowledge is.
Right.
regarding what they're talking about.
Right.
Picture walk.
Yes.
Like what you're doing, picture walk if it's fiction.
Yes. Do y'all do a picture walk with every group, no matter the level?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But even like her questioning was beyond what the text was going. She was getting them to infer a little bit and building on their background. What is your background knowledge on
And
this?
this book is really cool because it's realistic fiction and it actually has like a story in the beginning, a fictional story, and then it switches and it gives like actual factual information about tracker dogs. And I'm sure y'all noticed that because there's more books like that.
That's good
In
for
that
getting
age
them ready
range.
for the paired selections.
Well, but so it was funny. So when she's introducing the book and she's talking about that and she's saying it's a realistic fiction, do y'all know what that is? And I'm looking at that book and I'm like, what? And I'm looking at the title and then I'm like, so then they get through the little story and then they get right into the information. And I was like, it's not realistic fiction, and I let it play out. I was like, so after the video, I was like, give me the book and look at it, and I was like, oh my God, it really is. So that is just coming up, and we're just seeing that with HMH, and we haven't seen it. So yesterday when I planned with 4th grade, I said, hey, be aware of this, because 2nd grade had a book. And I said, have y'all looked through these books yet? And they said, no, but we came upon a story in the Basil, and it actually had it in there. And it threw the kids for a loop and them for a loop, that it was, because they went and introduced it as a fiction, and then it came back in as an informational.
Because
So
I did this book with my other high group in my other class, and they were like, oh yeah, like the one about the buffalo. And I was like, yes, because there was another one that they had done previously, and it's very similar to this one, where it's not, this one is like half and half, whereas that one was like, it was all factual, and then right in the middle of the book, there was like a little fictional story about a buffalo or something like that.
Mhm.
And so they made that connection to that other book, so, yeah.
And that's how the 4th grade one, it was like the fiction was embedded into the nonfiction. So they had like a box, and then that's where you were getting your fiction story at, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, it really, because it was throwing the kids off a little bit about what it,
Mhm.
what it was about.
Mhm.
People.
Okay, does anyone want to add to that? Kyle?
They are really good smelling because they're made to help people and stop people from doing things if you know their plan or anything. And they're protecting.
Okay, anyone else? Have they basically said everything? Okay, so let's look at these words really quickly. These are what we like to call vocabulary words. So these are words that you'll see throughout the book. So let's just familiarize ourselves with them. That way if you come to one of these words in the book, and let's say it's a word that you've not seen before, or it's a word that maybe you don't know how to say, or maybe you don't know what it means, we can go over them, and then when you come to that word in the book, then you know what it means, you know how to say it, and it doesn't affect your reading, okay, or understanding of what you're reading. So what is this?
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue.
Ground to a halt.
Ground to a halt. So basically what that means is something's going to happen to where everything stops at that point. Because halt is basically another word for stop. Like, have you ever heard someone say, halt, who goes there? They want them to stop and like introduce themselves or make themselves known. So that's basically what it means. Ground to a halt means like something's going to happen to where something is happening that's stopping right at that moment.
Oh, I seen one person do that too. My mom they introducing to themselves, but I think they said stop instead of pause.
Oh, wow. So now you can use the word halt if you want to say stop.
Halt, say halt.
Okay, this is
victims, disaster, detector dogs, press conference, paramedics, sniffing, scent, canine unit, tracker dogs, realistic fiction.
So when I introduced these words, I said, that way when you get to the word and you don't know what it means, you can understand what it means. And I actually never really went over what they mean. So like I should have been like, is there a word that you see that you don't know what it means? Or like with another group, I did it with another group, of course I thought about this after this was being videoed, but I said pick a word that you have a question about. And they picked a word that they didn't know, and one kid picked a word, he knew the word and what it was, and he had like an extension question, but a lot of them didn't know, so I didn't actually go over the words and what they meant, except for realistic fiction, because I was the genre.
Grind to a halt.
Well, that's the
They're-
only one I
they
went,
also- But they
recognized that they didn't know it.
to you,
Yes.
they didn't know it, so that's
Right.
good too.
Right, but then like, you know, you sometimes think about some of the kids that aren't gonna say that, they're just gonna sit there and be like, I don't really know what any of these mean, but they're not gonna actually say anything. But all these kids are very vocal, so, that's, yes,
And
yes,
that's good.
yes.
You've made it a safe zone for them.
Mhm.
So basically, these words and this
Tracker dogs, and it's kind of like Bella.
Okay, so it's basically what Bella said. So I want you to open your book.
She was
and
going
I want
over
you to just kind of look
realistic
through
fiction.
really
Yeah, also
quickly.
over with
So-
that realistic fiction.
This page on page 2, this is where your story is going to be starting. And what do you notice about the pages and the pictures? What do you notice, Bella?
That they're fake.
Yeah, like this is an illustration of something.
Like
But
that
it's of information that is real. Okay, so then look, I want you to go to page 6. Page 6. Quickly. Go to page 6.
Can you go over like there's a
And you
non-fiction
have
text feature.
That nonfiction text feature of a map. Okay, so they're incorporating some of those nonfiction features into the fiction part of the book. Okay, and then go to page 10. What do you notice about what happens on?
From a passport.
Okay, so this group is a higher group, so they have the option to read in their head or silent read. And I don't know how y'all do this, because this is just how I was taught to do it when I first started doing guided reading. Like we were told they all start at the same time, and then when you want them to talk louder and read louder, I knock in front of them. Like, do y'all do? Is that kind of how y'all do it too? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's some sort of like signal that y'all do. And I've heard of people doing it like you start now, and then you start, and then you start, and then you start. Because if they all start at the same time, what happens sometimes? Because I know this happens to me a lot with my kids. Yeah, they will like wait, and I'll watch them. And I don't know if I do it in this group, but in the other one that was in the other video, I noticed that one student was like basically repeating what another student. So I made them start over on the page.
Word.
Yeah.
Like you'll see them going and they say the last word.
Yes. So I'm like, I need you to start over right here. So I have to watch that.
So that they don't think that I'm like noticing that. I'm like, oh, hold on, I wanted to hear you read that part again.
Right, like
that
that.
way they get off on
Yes.
the pattern
Yes.
and they don't realize that you caught.
I had to stop doing it like that, and I had to do this, then this, then this, because I had too many that would either overpower each other,
Right.
or they would try to race each other. So now
Right.
they follow along, and we go one at a time.
Here's 22 minutes.
I used to say
No, I want you to keep your voice up.
going safely after a family gathering at the Forest Preserve picnic ground. Went
So she's keeping this data on this, we have it right there, Ms. Keck, will you show that, on this anecdote?
Oh,
That's
right.
what she's putting her data, as they're doing a short little running record,
Why don't you write that word?
and she's making this.
Okay, so he came to a word. I don't remember what word it was.
Here, I'll write that.
during the outing. Going safely after a family gathering at the Forest Preserve picnic ground. Went are we awry yesterday.
Why don't you write that word?
So I could tell one didn't know the word, and probably two did not know what it meant. So like at the very end, when they all finished reading, I went over like what that word meant, and that's why he wrote it. So do y'all do stuff like that? Like when they come to a word they don't know, do you tell them that? Like, hey, if you're reading and you come to a word you don't know, is there something that they do? Like, do they write it down, or do you just like?
I normally write them down, and then they get to keep it with their book,
Okay.
and that way they can.
You write them
Yes.
down?
As
Okay.
they go along, yes.
And
but
if
I
they
give
miss
it
a
to 'em.
word?
Mhm.
So like if they miss a word while they're reading, do you go back and go over the word with them, or do you let them continue? Like, do you stop them right then, or do you let them
Let them
finish?
go, and then we
Okay.
talk about it when they're done.
Good.
There was another teacher earlier that said that she has the kids write down unfamiliar words too as they're reading, and then they go back in and they talk about those words. So they write them down in their journal.
I also do it a little differently, and I correct them right then and there, because I always say, does that look right, or does that sound right? Does that make sense when you're reading? So I typically will do that and
Right.
talk about it right then, and writing it down too for later would be great too. And do it right then.
That's what I do to, especially those kiddos that I'm noticing that when we look at that beginning sound or something,
don't
we
read
keep
through.
skipping, if that's that skill and the goal I'm working on with them. They have it on a sticky note with the goal written down that I have them keep with their book, so they
Oh, I
know
like
what
that.
we're working on.
Like, what do you mean?
Okay, I
Give me
brought
an
one.
example.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, So for example, one of my kids, like her goal is scoop up the words. So hers is phrasing, so she keeps this with her to practice that phrasing piece. Another one, his, it's a lesson from Jennifer Saravallo, juggle the 3 balls. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? And so his, I have the visuals on there, so that he does that.
He uses that. That's awesome.
I'm gonna fast forward, right?
We follow on a tree. We search to wrap her in blankets and carry her back to the forest reserve headquarters, where paramedics made sure she
So
was
I think we're gonna
okay.
stop here because I didn't.
Police held a press conference.
We went over the
Okay,
words.
stop where you're at. No, you're not.
I think you're right.
Get
Yeah,
your,
I do.
get your journal out really quickly. Here's your book. Okay, so you're gonna flip the page.
Super quiet. So this is your high group that you.
So
like- Sorry. So like I said, this is a long amount. This is a lot of time. Like 20 minutes. Let's see. I mean, who has 20 minutes really? I mean, if you do, then that means you're probably not getting to as many groups as you probably like to. So probably what you should do is like maybe wait and do the writing piece the next day, because this is, you know, I'm already at 20 minutes basically. So you kind of have to decide where you're going to make that cutoff, and then they can warm read it the next day and then do some sort of writing. They're going to read this book again, and then they're going to do a project with it the next time I see them, and so that's why we did this writing piece.
How often do you meet with this high group?
Once a week.
Which is,
Yeah.
so if you're,
Might be twice a week if that's a good week, because I only have like 20 minutes. On a
But
good
the
day, I have
whole
about
group-
25 minutes for guided reading.
just meeting with that one group, once a week, 20 minutes may not be bad.
Right.
Because you won't see them again.
But that means I only get to see one group out of that whole class that day because I have half the amount of time. You know what I mean? They're getting it in Spanish, obviously,
Right.
but you know, they're some of these kids are not in the highest group in Spanish.
What were you getting ready to have them do?
Oh,
The
they're
writing?
about to do a just
Reflection on their writing, what they learned.
writing about what they learned.
Okay, at the top of your page.
And so they write it out and then she has them share it.
You want to talk about your extension activity?
That you do.
Extension activity that you do.
Oh yeah, so these are just some examples of things that they've done as projects. So like they've done posters, like most of this is nonfiction. We talked about biographies, and they did this with Ben Franklin. Lizards as a lizard book. This was the book I was telling you about. That was realistic fiction. This is Black Rhinos. And then this was a brochure that they did, and inside it has beginning, middle, and end, the problem and solution, and then they have to create their own summary, because we've been talking about how like a lot of the books in these HMH books, every single one of them has a summary on the back. It might just be like 1 or 2 sentences, but we talk about that and how the summary gives you kind of a glimpse of what the book is going to be about, and so we did that. And then obviously like they do stuff in their journals, and this is stuff that I do with most of my like higher kids, my top 2 to 3 groups, and then like they didn't do it this time, but they'll do it the next time that I see them, and that's what they work on while I'm meeting with these groups. They do responding, or like if they've been given a task during guided reading time, that's what they do during that time. So how do y'all do that? Like what do y'all, like when y'all are at guided reading, what are y'all's other kids doing? Because mine's going to look different than y'all's because I have a lot less time than y'all do.
So I do
Centers.
a writing and some kind of word work versus either high frequency words or the spelling patterns.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
I save the silent reading when we're having the wind time, and then they have to respond to.
Right,
So
right. Basically the same.
And do y'all give your higher kids projects as well? Or do y'all still just
No,
do it?
sometimes we'll start it with me, depending on how much time we have, and say they're gonna go back to stations, I might say, okay, so at least I want you to work on it the next however many minutes, before you go back to your station, and then, they'll work on it during that tier time if they're not pulled, but for those that have like GT with me, that makes it harder for them. They don't have as much time, so then when I pull them, we kind of have to do a little bit more together. It just kind of depends on how it's structured with if they need to go out somewhere.
A lot of the times I do the literacy circles instead of the guided reading, and they meet with me on Mondays, and they have a check-in on Wednesdays for themselves. They don't have to meet with me, but they can meet together and run it how they want to.
So when you do that, that's your higher kids, or is that for all?
That's
your
like the
higher
highest.
kids?
Yes, that's basically my highest group.
Okay.
And then I check in with them on Friday to see where they're at.
So they're like used to like the check-in. Like what does that look like?
They
just
get together with
talk
their
to each
books
other?
and they talk to each other. They can pick a chapter that maybe they want to read together or share with each other.
Oh, I like
So
that.
that's what they
So
do.
you obviously modeled that at the beginning of the year. That's awesome. I like that.
And see, it's kind of easy this year because the highest group, they're like, they're with it. And
Yeah.
they're wanting
That's
to do
always
that.
nice.
So, yes.
You don't have to like.
You know what's great though
keep
within
redoing it.
to do the literature circles is everything would be in here for you. You could put that down that you wanted them to tackle your questions, everything, all your comprehension and extension activities. So that would be nice and save you a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So
Um,
this is like taking me, so like, let's just say my mid-level kids, which this year, they're fairly high, but like, this takes me a good 4 seatings with them to get through this book.
And that's okay.
So like, we'll do the cold read one day, and by the time it's like cold read, okay, I'm moving on to the next guided reading group. Because if you follow this
It
can
breaks
take
it
you
down.
through a
Yeah.
few seatings with them, because like at the very end, with this is just an example. It's kind of quick. It's not like that because this is like
But
one
this was
seating.
not like done.
Yeah, so like, it's like on the last project, it was like, okay, let's get together, let's talk about everything in this, now let's go over, and it says on here, word for word, about studying the trees and making it. It tells you what to do, so I didn't have to be a genius. I was like, oh,
That's
let's do
what's
this
so
project
nice.
today. This looks like fun.
Yeah.
But it does take me, that's why I was like, it takes me a few seatings to get through one of these
Yeah.
groups, which is
I feel
good.
like that's okay.
And
Yes.
that's okay. We
Yes.
just wanted to. We were trying to capture all the components for you, and that's the only reason we filmed it in its
I
entirety.
love
Right.
this. I think
Yeah.
this is like an
This
easier
is so
version of LLI.
easy. It's like
Yeah.
it's like
Yes.
guided reading
Yeah.
for dummies, like those
Yeah,
dummy
it really
books. You know,
is.
like that's.
And I
This is so nice.
And
I
my
like
brain
it.
work
because
required.
you can go
No.
more in depth. So we were at one point at my old school where it was every time you met, you had to have a new book, and it just felt like a race.
Yeah.
And so it was, of course, I kind of just did it because you have to make time to make sure you really understand. It's not just meeting the quota of books, and so.
Well, and that's almost like just skimming the surface and never going down deep for the understanding, and you need
And
that.
I love how this breaks it down into like skills. So like these are the questions you would ask if you're focusing on key ideas and details. These are the questions you would ask if you're talking about the text and how it's organized. These are I like that because
That's why I did the trees, because
Yeah.
we focused on setting.
Yeah.
So I
You
was
just
like,
skip the in-depth.
yeah. So I'm gonna show y'all one more, and I want y'all to watch. We're gonna draw a little bit over, I think, because we're at. So this is. Yeah. So this is my like middle of the road. Some are like they're below level. They're not where they should be. But you're gonna watch one of them who kind of struggles through like the word working part of it, but then when he gets to his reading, he like just completely zooms through it. So I want y'all to figure out who that is. Just see.
Your letters out, they don't have to be in any certain order, make sure they're all facing.
I'm gonna fast forward this because for all they're doing is organizing.
This is when I look at the camera and go,
Yeah,
does
she
it take
does.
them forever to
Change to, did anything else in the word change? No. Okay, alright, put your I back, leave your O, and now we're gonna do O-Y, so put an O and a Y in the middle of your bubble. So everything else goes up. Just put O and Y in the middle of your bubble. O-Y. You found your Y? Okay, so O-Y also says the oi sound. Everybody say oi. Okay. it sounds like there's an E on the end, but there's not, right? So if you see O-Y in a word, you're also gonna say oy, okay? So how would you make the word toy? Make the word toy for me. Okay, if you know toy, then you know boy. Make the word boy. Very good. Sometimes the B's and the D's, you have to put them around before the P. Okay, if you know boy and toy, make the word soy. Okay, what am I changing? What are we changing in the words? The beginning, the middle, or the end?
The beginning.
You're changing the beginning, yes, okay? Make the word, so we know soy, we know boy. Make the word, boy is the word, make the word boy.
Okay.
Very good. You want all those words to change to the beginning sound. Okay, I'm gonna give you a harder one. I want you to make the word enjoy. Enjoy. So like your I, it says F. What letter says F? Okay, joy. There you go. Good. And what are you missing? Joy. Where does that go? Very good. And
They're very worried about like people looking at their stuff. They're very competitive. You're not gonna get the answer from me.
So to scaffold that a little bit, what could she have done first before just having them build that whole enjoy? What could she have done to scaffold that?
Broken pieces, yeah.
Yeah, like joy and then add.
Because she's already building all those, so she could have come in with joy and then said bring in joy.
Yeah.
And then it would have, just to help scaffold that learning a little bit.
joy. No. What says J says J in English.
So here,
and the
he's
G
trying to do G
says the
because
G.
in Spanish,
Spin.
the G says the G sound. So I had to, go with that.
And J,
You can pass forward it.
waste, roots. Okay, I want you to look at these words that we just heard of. Which word means the same thing as like to move around or just to move around? Which word?
Change.
Okay, change could mean that. And one more that could possibly mean no.
And spread.
Spread, yes. So when you spread things around and move them around, but also change means you're moving things, you're changing things. Very good. Does that mean moving things around? No. Okay, so what you're gonna do?
Ask questions that he knows the answer to, and you just being a little Yeah.
So I'm gonna fast forward to
What are they? They grow on trees.
Okay, so here, he didn't know the word leaves. So I was just giving him like clues as to like things that he can connect to, but I probably should have like helped him work through the word itself and not just be like, oh, it grows on a tree and it's green, So that's just something that I would work on.
So we're just gonna fast forward.
People can trees and people too.
said this is the word this, not the word this.
See how fast he's like going through that thing? What you're not seeing is he's flipping it around and she's keeps redirecting and redirecting.
So this is gonna probably be the same.
I don't see this. Like, I'm not noticing that.
But I am, so I'm watching, I'm like, I can't wait till you guys get to it. So what was shocking is he doesn't skip a beat on any of that, and the whole time I was like, oh, he's not gonna get any of this, and so he sat back when I was talking to her, he sat back there, and then he met me outside, and he was like, did you think I was a good reader? And I was like, I did. I said, but I was shocked because you didn't pay attention to anything. He was like, you're practicing, I'm good.
Oh,
So it was
So when y'all are doing your note taking, like any notes that you take, what do y'all write down? Because sometimes I struggle with this also. Like I struggle with, for one, what to write down, and two, how to use it to help me later on. So I've learned it different ways, and I've learned, like I was taught at one point to do like kind of like how you decode a running record, like SC work for self-correction. TT, the teacher told the word. So those are the kind of things that I write down. What do y'all write down when y'all take notes? Like the same things, or do y'all?
I do, but I write notes off to the side if I notice they're leaving, like if they leave endings off.
Okay.
Or if they like to repeat the word, or I've had a lot this year that like to sound each and every word out.
Yes. Okay.
So I write notes down like that, but.
Where that?
Or if they omit a lot. I always make notes if they're omitting a lot of words, if it's like a common theme with them.
Or you can tell if they're guessing just by the first letter.
Or patterns that you see them consistently struggle with. I do it on my LLI too.
If I'm not doing running records and things, cause we had a whole box sheet at middle school to use, and so usually it's like a plus and a delta, and so what they did well, and then what to work on, and so then you can look at it next time, and you know, well, you don't want to hit this skill because they're doing well on it, but yet go back to this, or you know then to make a little goal note for them.
I like the goal notes, though. I really do like that a lot.
That personalizes it for them.
Not necessarily the reading or reading right then of the group. I go through the folder and I highlight if they're not reading at home.
Okay.
And there's not a parent signature, so that I can keep track of if the parent comes in and says, "What, my child making progress?" Well, let's talk about that. How much, practice, this is what we do here at school, and he takes these books home, and we talk about, are they reading at home? Because that helps, and the benefits that we see when they do read at home.
Right.
And how to help them at home, not just listen while they're cooking, but actually sit down, because a lot of the kids I've noticed this year have also, they're looking at that first letter, and so they're inserting a word that makes complete sense in
This one right here.
in a sentence.
She was doing that.
With the story. A lot of the kids are doing that. And if you're not watching the words that they're reading, you're thinking, oh, you did great.
Right.
But if you watch it, because when we're taking running records, that's what we're doing, they're not reading word for word. And so that helps me explain to the parents how crucial it is for them to actually sit down with them and document when they're reading with them.
Right.
That's another note-taking thing that I do. It's a check. It's not necessarily when I'm listening and reading groups, but that as well.
And with their books that go home, I include a sheet. It's different questions for fiction and nonfiction that the parents can ask them to work on that comprehension at home too, instead of just making.
That's good, because so many times they don't know what to ask about. They really don't.
So we have like 1 more minute. So just look through the things on your table. This is a running record template that Mrs. Herzog brought that you can use if
just a
you'd like
spot
to take it. Yeah, so just a spot check, but
The
yeah.
one thing that we wanna talk to y'all about is for the next PLC too, would y'all be interested in being able to have time to look through these and then get some guided reading lessons together, like start making, so if you want, if there were specific vocab that you needed, make those in advance and be able to slip in there, so that way y'all have that and it makes life a little easier.
Sure.
With y'all, because really we want these, to be beneficial to you and to help with student growth and professional growth as well, so.
We have a first grade teacher that said one of the things she does, and she'd like to use her time on February 13th, where it says project, she takes that, blows that up, and puts it on a card, and then those are cards that they pick up when they finish that book, and they take that activity home. So it might be even just prepping some of the things that are on here that you want to go in a little baggie or something that would go with the books too. So it could be prepping word work stuff, it could be prepping the follow-up activities. But we thought, we've thrown a lot at you today, so maybe for February 13th, doing the guided reading in your own room, planning some more lessons and things like that for the spring.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here. I appreciate it.